Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Don't know if you can hear that train in the background, but we're down at the river again. We're just enjoying some nice, beautiful weather. Downtown Waterloo, Iowa. And see, there's that train bridge. That's where the train's coming from. But anyway, wanted to do a follow-up on yesterday's video in regards to mathematics and language. Then, in furthering that, I wanted to talk about certain legislations that go about continually around the world, and the mathematics within that in regards to that language and the effects that it has. And one of the particular cases I want to talk about today is out in California, I believe. They have recently, in the last couple of years, legislated the use of plastic straws. Now, granted, their intent was fine and dandy, but the effect wasn't there. And I'll explain it, because if you go out to California, or you know somebody that lives in California, ask them about the straws that are supplied to California now, and you'll see that they've replaced plastic straws in paper wraps with paper straws in plastic wraps. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense when the intent was to reduce the amount of plastics going into our environment, and yet they're still using plastic somehow in the distribution of straws. The only difference is that now, instead of taking the wrapper off and throwing the wrapper away because it's just the wrapper and it's paper and it doesn't matter, and then being concerned about the plastic straws that people are throwing away, we're saying, okay, well, let's use plastic straws. And the first step of throwing away the wrapper doesn't matter, because it's not the concern of the legislation. So when they do the legislation without concern to the effect or the outcome in all aspects of the equation, then they're really not doing much, are they? They're just changing the language around within it to satisfy some kind of accord and satisfaction somewhere along the line. But again, like I said yesterday, all this language stuff is just fictional. When we start writing things down, it's all fictional, and it's all intent upon the word. In beginning was word, and I've said my word is my bond. So when I want to start regulating, I'll write it down my own self. Otherwise, I follow by nature's regulations, no one else's. So think about this stuff when I'm talking about the mathematics of language. You have to understand, using the right words for yourself, which is your jurisdiction, is paramount if you want to have an effect on the outcome per your intent. So again, make sure you understand the words that are being used. And if you're out there voting for all this legislation, you better understand the legislation instead of just being pleased with the outcome that they're no longer using straws, and then just ignoring the entire fact that they're using plastic wrappers now instead of paper wrappers. So think about this stuff, and think about the reality of other people's intents, because every law, the operation of law, is based on intent. The operation of nature, it regulates itself. There is no intent except for survival, and it will forever survive. You'll never kill nature. So anyway, think about this stuff and learn how to live in the right capacity, and that's at the present. Think about all the words and understand it all comes down to mathematics. So when they're legislating laws to reduce the use of plastic, so that it doesn't affect our environment through the dumping of them in our landfills and whatnot. And then make sure the wording is correct so that the plastic itself is the issue and not the straw. When we become concerned with certain words and use them mathematically against each other, and this is the importance. Here's where I'll tell you about the importance of the Miranda rights. When they read you your Miranda rights, there's several things that are not continuity, that don't have continuity. There's some kind of disclosure. There's some kind of separation. And what I mean is, they talk about you have the right to be representation of an attorney. Attorney's the wrong word. That is not the right word. When they say anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, those aren't the right words. Because I guarantee you, I can get up in a court of law. They can't. They're acting corporately. They have to go into a court of equity by being pulled into a court of equity. Otherwise, they're in a civil action, which is a contract. They can't enter a court of equity unless they have the standing as a man. That is the only place you will find fair and equitable. In your corporations, nothing is fair and equitable. It's all commercial. They even tell you all crimes are commercial. So how can it be fair and equitable if all crimes are commercial and all commerce is crime? Because remember, you got to read that backwards and forwards. It is phonetically and mathematically correct. If that's the way they're stating it, that's their presumption. That's what their intent is, that all crimes are commercial, then all commerce is criminal. Think about this stuff. It all comes down to mathematics. Again, like I said, understand the mathematics of language. Before you can convey any kind of intent of your thought on paper, you have to make a first mark. That's the first mark. In mathematics, there's always a first, and then there's a second, and then there's a third, and then there's a fourth. And you keep adding to it, and in your adding to it, you can subtract certain things, go back, whatever. It's all done through punctuation and mathematics. And your punctuation in language is a lot to do with your mathematics. It shows your separations, additions, conjunctions, contractions. And something else I wanted to mention today in regards to something I wanted to mention yesterday and didn't. When we think about these words that have suffixes and prefixes that have been added to them, that means, and this is why I say those are no longer words. When you add suffixes and prefixes to a word, you now make a term. It's now a term. There are conditions that have been put upon it that make it a term. And we understand that terms and conditions are parts of contracts. And when we think of language in regards to prefixes and suffixes that have been added to words, those prefixes and suffixes that make those terms and conditions can be contracted down. Contract, in another sense, can be synonymous with subtracting. The word contract itself can be synonymous with a mathematical term. Okay? It's in regards to language. Now we can take the suffixes and prefixes off by subtracting them, and it contracts down to the original root word. Now, another point I want to make out is one of the words that we use, that I used yesterday specifically in the video in regards to representative, was the word present. Okay? When we think about the word present, phonetically, it has a different vibration when you say it differently. At the present time, I present this present. I've used the same word that looks that looks the same literally on paper, but I've used it in 3 different contexts with 3 different meanings that have 3 different effects because they all have 3 different intents. And they're all defined by the way I use them in the position that they were used in. Present, as in a time, right now, the present time, I present, I am present, presently. I present that I am present, presently. And it's all, you can use those words, but you have to know how to express your intent on paper and verbally. And they both take mathematics. Period. Plain and simple. So learn, I urge people to learn the mathematics of language. I urge you to study etiology, etiology, which is the root cause of things, events. I urge you to study etymology, etymology, which is root words. And then I urge you to study epistemology, epistemology, the study of knowledge, root knowledge. Learn this stuff, people. You get back to your origins. Understand nature has its own regulation. And even it runs by mathematics. If you have an overpopulation of hares, it means an abundance of food supply for the wolves, coyotes, and such. If you're going to be sheeple, there's plenty of food source for those that are going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. If it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless. Love you. Have a great day. I'm going to go enjoy this awesome river some more. I'm going to go take these things off. Get barefoot naked with my feet. And I'm going to go get some contact with my Mother Earth. Have a great day, people. Bye-bye.